Today's recipe is bread pudding with vanilla custard sauce. You're going to need bread. This is just some white bread that I made and broke up into large chunks. You can use any kind of bread you want. I would avoid an herbaceous type of bread like rosemary bread, but any kind of white bread or just plain store-bought sandwich bread will do just fine. Also, half a cup of heavy cream, 2 cups of milk, 4 eggs, and half a cup of sugar. In a mixing bowl, I'm going to add the half cup of sugar, half a cup of heavy whipping cream, then I'm going to add our 2 cups of milk, and lastly I'm going to add our 4 eggs. This part's optional, but I'm going to add a teaspoon to a teaspoon and a half of ground cinnamon into our wet mixture. And now we're going to beat this together with a whisk until it's really well combined. Here I've just placed our bread chunks into a well-greased baking pan. Now what you're going to do is pour your wet mixture all over the bread, trying to get it as even as possible, trying to coat each piece of bread in as much of the wet mixture as you can. You want each piece of bread to soak up as much of that wet mixture as you possibly can, so make sure it's as even as possible and spread it as well as you can. Now all I'm going to do is use a spoon to push the bread down into the wet mixture at the bottom, again so all the bread can soak up as much of that wet mixture as it possibly can. Alright, now what I'm going to do is cover this with aluminum foil and let this sit in the refrigerator for about 12 hours. You don't have to let it sit for 12 hours, but do let it sit for at least an hour so the bread can soak up all the wet mixture. The longer you let it sit, the better it'll taste and the gooier it'll be. Alright, it's been overnight. Now in a small bowl, I'm going to put half a tablespoon of flour, about a tablespoon and a half of butter, and also about a teaspoon and a half of cinnamon, and mix this together until really well combined. I also have my oven preheating at this point to 350. This is what you're going for with your butter. I just mixed it with a fork. Now you're going to put it in your freezer to reset for about 10 minutes. Now I'm just going to take our butter mixture that is set in the freezer, and I'm just going to spread this all over the top of the bread as best I can. Alright, now this is going to go into a preheated oven at 350 degrees for 45 minutes. For the custard sauce, you're going to need 1 cup of milk, a 1/4 cup of white sugar, 1 egg, and 1 teaspoon of vanilla. Now in a saucepan over medium-low heat, you're going to add your 1 cup of milk, as well as your 1/4 cup of white sugar. And you're going to whisk this together until it all melts and bring it to a very low simmer over that medium-low heat. Here I have our 1 egg that I just beat really well, and I took our milk off of the heat as soon as it started to simmer. Now what we're going to do is temper the eggs by adding a tablespoon of the hot milk mixture at a time to the eggs, and do this enough to where you're comfortable that the eggs are temperate enough. Well, what tempering the eggs does is brings up the temperature of the egg so that when you add it into the milk, it doesn't just scramble. Alright, I returned our milk to the burner on a very low heat, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to slowly whisk in our tempered eggs. Like I said, the reason you temper the eggs is so they don't just scramble in your sauce. No one wants scrambled eggs in their custard sauce. Now you're just going to let this cook on a very low heat for about 5 or 10 minutes until it thickens up into that creamy sauce that you want. Here's our sauce. As you can see, it thickened up nicely. It's nice and smooth. If you happen to lose track of time or just cooking on too high of a heat and it gets really thick and lumpy and not creamy, you can sometimes save it by just adding in a splash of milk and whisking that in. Okay, my bread pudding just got done in the oven. Now what I'm going to do is add a teaspoon of vanilla to the custard mix and just mix this around. Alright, I just pulled the bread pudding out of the oven. Some people like to let it set for a little while, but I like to serve it right out of the oven so it's nice and gooey. Alright, now to plate this up, I'm just going to take a scoop of the bread pudding and then drizzle over some of our delicious vanilla custard sauce. As much as you want. I like a lot, but that's up to you. Well, there you go, everyone. Bread pudding. Good luck and enjoy.